Hey Japeechen Scouters, Justin here. And a few weeks ago, I showed you 3 simple rules of knot tying. I told you that those rules would apply to every single knot you tied. Well, unfortunately, that's not always the case. So today, I'd like to show you some good knots that occasionally turn bad. So, what was rule number 1? Rule number 1 was that any knot we tie should be easy to tie. And every knot we've tied, for the most part, have been pretty easy to tie once you practice them. Except, enter figure A, the monkey fist. Do you remember when we tied the monkey fist a few days ago? The monkey fist was not easy to tie, so it failed rule number 1. But that doesn't mean that it's not a great knot. It's just a great knot that sometimes turns bad. So, what was rule number 2? Rule number 2 was that any knot we tie, once it's tied, should stay tied. Well, almost every knot we've tied, once we tie them, has stayed tied. But let's just say we tie a marlin spike, and we put the spike in, and we pull on it. That knot's staying tied. But now, let's say, for the sake of demonstration, we pull the spike out, and then pull on it. The knot comes undone. So the marlin spike does not always follow rule number 2. Unless it has the spike in there, it doesn't stay tied. So the marlin spike sometimes fails rule number 2. Okay, rule number 3 is something that can apply to any knot we tie. Let's use the square knot. Let's go right over left, and then let's go left over right and tie our square knot. It's easy to tie, it stays tied, and then rule number 3 is that when we want to untie it, it should be easy to untie. And 99% of the time, all we got to do is push the 2 ends together and it comes untied. But for the sake of demonstration, let's say that we pulled and we pulled and we pulled and we put so much pressure on it that when we go to untie it, no matter what we do, I just can't get my pinching fingers in there. So, this doesn't just happen with the square knot, this can happen with any knot we tie. Sometimes, if there's too much force on it, no matter what we do, it'll be hard to untie. So, in this case, all of our knots could fail rule number 3. But that doesn't mean they're bad knots. That just means that sometimes they're good knots that go bad. So, to further prove this point, I've prepared 2 demonstrations. On my left, I've prepared a square knot. I took 2 pieces of rope and I tied them together with my square knot and I pulled really tight and then I put a weight on the end of it. And I've let this weight sit here for a few days. And I came back and I went to untie it, and no matter what I did, I just could not get it untied. So, I had a great idea. On my right, I've tied a new knot. This knot is called a Carrick bend. A Carrick bend is the perfect knot to tie when we know that we need to tie 2 pieces of rope together, but we know that it's going to be under lots and lots and lots of stress, and we know that eventually we're going to need to untie it. So, today, I thought it might be fun to go over one of my favorite scouting knots, the Carrick knot, and teach all of you what to do so you don't find yourself in this situation where your good knots turn bad. So, to tie our Carrick knot, we're going to need a few things. We're going to need 2 pieces of rope. And in this case, this knot is primarily used for natural fiber rope. So we've got our 2 pieces of natural fiber rope. Then, the other thing we're going to need is we're going to need some smaller string or some paracord. We're going to use this to seize the ends of the knot. Seizing is very similar to whipping, which we did a few weeks ago, but I'll go over it real slow so you can see how it's done. Okay, this knot's a little strange. So, to make it easier for you to see, I thought it might be fun to take your view from up here and bring it down to my hand level. So, let's do that now. Okay? 1, 2, 3. Hey Japeechen Scouters, Justin here again, and now you're in hand view. So, let's begin our Carrick bend knot. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take 1 piece of rope and we're going to make an underhand loop with it. There we go. So, for the sake of this knot, we're going to say that this is rope number 1. Okay, now let's take rope number 2 and we're going to lay it underneath the loop we made in rope number 1. So you should have something that looks just like this. Okay, now let's take the running end of rope number 2, and we're going to take it over top of the standing end of rope number 1. Now we're going to take the running end of rope number 2, and we're going to take it underneath the running end of rope number 1. So let's go underneath, just like that. Now, to finish our knot, we're going to focus on this loop that we made in rope number 1 and this part that's underneath from rope number 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the running end of rope number 2, go over top of the loop, underneath of the standing end, and then over top of the other side of the loop. So let's come over, under, and over. And there we go. And then let's pull all 4 sides. This is your Carrick bend. We could finish our Carrick bend right now, but if we pulled on these sides, the knot would collapse on itself. It would still be strong, but it would not follow the rule that we're trying to follow here, which is to make it easy to untie. So, to finish this knot and make it easy to untie, we're going to seize the ends of the rope. Seizing the ends of the rope is very similar to whipping, like we did on the end of our natural fiber rope. So, to continue, let's take our piece of paracord, take these 2 ends, put them side by side, and now we're going to tie a clove hitch, just like we did for our lashings, around both of these strings. So let's come over and around, make our X, around again, and then let's take our pinching fingers, pinch that X and go right underneath it, and pull it tight. There we go. So there we have a clove hitch tying both of these pieces together. Now, just like we do when we're lashing, we're going to wrap the rest of this rope around both pieces. Let's do that 3 times. 2 and 3. And there you go. Now, just like we're lashing, we're going to come in between the 2 pieces of rope 2 times. These we're going to pull very tight. So let's go around one more time, pull it tight, go around, and then on our last time, see these 2 loops we made? We're going to take the tail of our rope and slide it right underneath those. And then we're going to pull it tight. There we go. Now we've seized one end of our rope. So when we pull on it, as you can see, it does not put too much pressure on the knot. So now let's do that on the other side. Let's find the other 2 ends, and let's first tie our clove hitch. So let's come around and around again, and then on the 3rd time, take those pinching fingers, pinch the X and slide right underneath it. And there we go. Now pull it tight. Perfect. Now let's begin that wrapping. So let's come around and around again and around a 3rd time. And there we go. And let's line those up. Now let's come in between the 2 ropes 2 times. So in between and in between one more time, and then let's pull really tight. And to finish it off, let's tuck it right underneath one of those loops and pull it tight. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, when I pull on this, notice that in the middle, the knot does not tighten up on itself. This is a very strong knot that's used to tie 2 pieces of rope together, but when we know it's going to be under a lot of force, it will not collapse. So when we go to take it apart, all we have to do is take off each of these whippings we did, and the knot should come right undone. Okay, so I've had a lot of fun here, but before we go, I'd like to see all your faces one more time. So let's go back to face view. But thanks for stopping by, hand view. Hey Japeechen Scouters, Justin here again, and I'm so glad that you stopped over and learned how to tie one of my favorite scouting knots, the Carrick bend. I hope that you practice the Carrick bend and all of your other knots, and while you're doing that, if you find one of them that doesn't follow all the rules of knot tying, you'll know that that's okay. It's just sometimes good knots go bad. So for the next 30 days while we're stuck at home, remember to practice your knots and stay safe and stay scouting.